you're an American gun owner, you know the situation in Virginia is getting ridiculous. They've tried to pass literally everything from sensitive places restrictions to a magazine ban without a grandfather clause. It is absolutely absurd. Just last week, 8 different gun control bills passed the House. 8 different gun control bills passed the House in Virginia. It is absurd, it is draconian, it is tyrannical, and it is downright wrong. But that doesn't mean the whole state is like that. Even though Democrats, of course, want 10 seats to be Democratic and 1 seat to be Republican, around 45 to 48%, depending on the polls, of Virginians are Republicans. And there are great delegates in the House that are fighting against all this stuff. This is the Second Amendment fight of our time. It truly is. It's not happening in California. It's not happening in Hawaii. Somehow it's happening in Virginia. It's absolutely tragic, but we do have, again, against all this backdrop, some delegates who are fighting back. This delegate, Tom Garrett Jr., absolutely torched the gun grabbers to their face. If you are an American gun owner, you need to watch this. What is happening in Virginia will spread to the rest of the country unless we understand what is going on and do what we need to do to fight back. That is not an opinion, that is just the fact. On this channel, we work to bring the political issue of the Second Amendment to the forefront of people under the age of 25. It's the kind of core of what I do with Turning Point, and it's the core of what I do on here. If you like the sound of that, please subscribe down below. Okay, I'll play you this clip. This is worth watching, so I really hope you watch kind of everything he's got to say. I mean, he says it all here. It is dystopian, it is wrong, and it is downright tyrannical. Here's the clip.
Why would a government wish to disarm law-abiding citizens? I asked AI, Mr. Speaker, if the Constitution and the Bill of Rights were reduced to 12-point font, single-spaced, how many pages they would take up. The answer is 11. And so our founders were brilliant in their brevity, but alas, we torture and misinterpret those words as a result. If James Madison wanted to be a little bit more wordy, the Second Amendment wouldn't read, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." It would read, "The right of the people to keep and bear arms to defend themselves from tyranny shall not be infringed." Mr. Speaker, the government did not give me the right to defend myself, to defend my family, or to defend my freedom. And the government cannot take it away, try though it may. I was absolutely awestruck when a prominent religious advocacy organization for the largest Christian faith on earth got behind some of these particular bills. They must be reading a different Bible than me. Luke 22:36 says, Jesus told the disciples, "I tell you now, if you must, sell your cloak and buy a sword." And why? Because he had commanded them to go out and spread the word, and the roads were teeming with brigands, murderers, and thieves, and their right to defend themselves in doing that which was right was important even to Christ. Indeed, in the garden, Jesus didn't tell Peter to throw away his sword, he told him to put away his sword. And as a guy who goes to the Middle East a lot, I know there are people going, "Oh, there's Garrett throwing his Christianity at me." The Quran, the Torah, the Talmud, very, very prominent in Sikhism, in Buddhism, in Hinduism, is the right of people to defend themselves. It boggles the mind, Mr. Speaker, that this party will vote on party lines to eliminate mandatory minimums for rapists and child predators and murderers, and then along the same lines in reverse, vote to make an 80-year-old veteran who shed his blood to defend our nation a criminal because he possesses an 11-round magazine. Oh, that'll never happen. He just doesn't need to take it in public. Imagine if there's a fire in Fairfax County, Virginia, and the fire department responding goes in to put out the fire and reveals his 11-round magazine. This man who bled and watched his friends die for this country is a criminal, having never committed a crime in his life, because we said so. Sadly, those who vote this way either do not understand what the Bill of Rights means or do not care. Mr. Speaker, I'm in the habit this session of saying things in ways that make some people uncomfortable, so why stop now? The history of self-defense is soaked in the blood of innocence. Karate means empty hand in Chinese. Why was the hand empty? because the government controlled who had the weapons, and the people who were oppressed had to find a way to fight back against tyranny. Tens and tens of millions of people in the 20th century alone were murdered by their government. Here's the uncomfortable part. Gun control started in the United States with the slave codes. You were not allowed to sell a firearm to an African American. You were not allowed to sell a firearm to an indigenous person. Why? Because the real racists were afraid of the wrong people having guns. That's racism, not, oh, you don't like my bill, you're a racist. That's history. What's my source? NPR. Interestingly, some of the Democrats who drafted those bills would recognize the playbook we're seeing today from Democrats. And what happens when only the government is armed? All too often, Mr. Speaker, it's tyranny. I would wager, and I'm not asking, that you might own a firearm with a magazine with a capacity of greater than 10. That's all, I'm just saying. But when only the government, they say, oh, if guns are outlawed, only outlaws will have guns. Let me tell you who the outlaws are. I spoke to a Christian friend in Syria not long ago who was beside himself because he didn't know which of his friends had died. And I have friends in Iran who are texting me about tens of thousands of people who are murdered by the only people in Iran allowed to own guns this month, the government. And Iran's not the only place, and Syria's not the only place. Nazi Germany, no guns. Soviet Union, no guns. The killing fields of Cambodia, well, those people didn't have any guns. Maoist China, no guns. The patron of the Senate bill said, hey, man, I was a farmer in this country and blah, blah, blah. You know what? The United States threw off the oppressive yoke of British tyrannical rule a lot sooner than the country that some other people came from because they had guns. So why would a government wish to disarm law-abiding citizens? Maybe the government is afraid that the laws that they wish to pass are so horrifically oppressive and freedom-denying that they have cause to be afraid of law-abiding citizens. And that's just as our founders would have had it, Mr. Speaker. In closing, I will do something I try not to do too often. I will repeat myself. The government did not give me the right to defend myself, defend my family, or defend my freedom. And contrary to what you may think, you can't take it away. Thank you.
I mean, obviously, he's absolutely correct. What I would add to that, though, is this underscores an important point. In these states, right, like Virginia is going off the rails right now, but in these states, there are people that are willing to fight back. Like I said, Virginia is like 45 to 48% Republican. It is not a 90% Democrat state, even though the laws would seem that way. The important point in all of this, right, is to realize it is actually the fine margins. It is going from 51% to 49%. That is what loses you your rights. It's not this huge calamity. It's not this overwhelming tide. It is actually just small losses compounding over time. It's the same the other direction. The way we get our rights restored, right, the way we get a great Second Amendment regime in there isn't like something happens all at once, right? Obviously, like the repeal of the NFA will probably be all at once, but even little wins, like, the removal of the the introduction of the $0 NFA tax stamp and things like that we don't celebrate enough are these little bricks in the wall. And so the point isn't that we should celebrate all those things. The point isn't that we should go crazy, but we should acknowledge what's going on, right? Virginia is lost, not because of the 90%, but because of a margin of like 4% of people. That's what lost Virginia, right? It was essentially Republican turnout that lost the state. And there are still people fighting. He is absolutely right at the absurdity of these rules. They are absurd. They are un-American. They are draconian. He's right in every way about that, right? No disagreement at all. But the important thing to realize is this state elected that guy. This state elected that guy. And they also elected Abigail Spanberger, right? That's the reality. And so you have this kind of tension in every state between the forces that want to take your rights away and the pro-American, pro-freedom forces. And in every state, it is finely balanced, right? Some state more than others, like Alabama, you have a pretty healthy margin. But even like Texas, which people consider to be, deep red, the margin's not that big. And they can flip in a year and irreparable damage can happen. That is what has happened in Virginia on a factual level, right? On a factual level, that is what has happened in Virginia. And on a factual level, that might happen in your state too. You have to be aware of this. Virginia is a classic case of vigilance, right? This could come to North Carolina very easily and could start spreading down the board, right? California and those sorts of states obviously have been terrible for a long time, but there was a time not too long ago when they weren't, right? Ronald Reagan, right? Obviously that's a long time ago, but they've had good governors of California, right? And over time, little by little, right? Increment by increment, those states have flipped. And that is what can happen to your state too. So whether you're watching in Virginia, North Carolina, Florida even, right? Be aware that could happen, right? Florida, not too long ago, like 2 election cycles ago, was on the brink. And Ron DeSantis pulled it out by 0.3% or something in that gubernatorial race. These are very fine margins, and they compound over time. I guess what I want to say with all of this is he's absolutely correct, but the broader point is you need to realize, right? States aren't blue or red really, right? They're actually 50% blue, 50% red, and there's a little margin in the middle. And whichever way that margin flips is the way the state goes. And what's happening in Virginia will literally take decades to unravel. It is draconian, it is awful, but it is the current regime. And unfortunately, because of, honestly, Republican failure, it is the current regime that many Virginians will have to live in for a very long time. It is terrible. It is awful. Again, right, as a chapter president of Turning Point at a pretty major university, my big issue is the Second Amendment, right? That's why there's a logo on my hat, right? I fight for this all the time. If you like that idea, by the way, please subscribe. But this is not at the forefront of many Americans' mind, especially young Americans, right? They care about the economy, understandably. They care about immigration, which is very important, don't get me wrong. But things like our fundamental freedoms being taken away needs to get to the forefront of everyone's mind, whether you're in a red state, blue state, whether your rights have been taken away or they haven't yet, because they could be. Anyway, guys, I hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please subscribe down below if you're new. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you did enjoy. Stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next one.